Let me go now, Pat, to HO scale modeling. And this is done by Ed O'Rourke, who is the host. And the sponsor is Mainline Hobby Supply.
Mainline Hobby Supply is your one-stop store for model trains in G, O, S, HO, N and Z scales, including locomotives, rolling stock, track, train sets, and more to help build your model railroad. We are the largest model railroad shop in the area, and we carry a wide range of model railroad supplies across scales. Our friendly staff is always available to help with your modeling needs and to special order anything you may require. Mainline Hobby Supply is in southern Pennsylvania, halfway between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We are only an hour away from Baltimore, and we are easy to get to from the 70, 81, 83, and 270 freeways. Plan to stop by on your next trip through Pennsylvania. Mainline Hobby Supply also has an online store that can cater to your modeling needs wherever you are located. With our large inventory, fixed shipping costs, friendly and knowledgeable service, and prompt shipping, consider Mainline Hobby Supply for your next online order. Use the QR code to access our online store.
And our host for this is Ed O'Rourke, MMR. Ed, welcome.
So I'm going to continue on here, try and wrap this section of this up today. This is about the City Classics Grafton Avenue gas station that Jim Sacco produced. Someone came up with an idea for a model showcase of what you could do with it at one of our NER conventions. Since an awful lot of gas station structures are repurposed. And it happens at a local pizza restaurant called Pizza Regionale, which, by the way, makes the best pizza I have had this side of Italy, is in an old gas station in downtown Syracuse. So I lengthened it out. You can see the prototype there on the left, and then what I did with it in the other sections. Since that time, this was actually featured in the November RMC. They had two articles about it, one modeling it as having transitioned to a more modern station, and one modeling it as abandoned. So this has a lot of modeling possibilities with that. Moving on. All right. Housing. This is another thing that's an issue. These row houses were produced by International Hobby Corp. I picked them up at an auction for a couple of bucks. One of them I worked a little bit and reversed the two sides so that it looked a little different than some of the other ones. And with some American paint schemes and some different roofing, they're pretty suitable middle distance structures. The church next to it is a wooden kit. And there's another house to the right of this that's more wood. I want to keep the nicer structures closer to the side of the end of the layout where people can see them, and the ones that aren't quite so much back in a little bit. Bob Walker, if you remember, used to do the scratch building column in RMC back in the day, said if it's 10 feet away, it doesn't need nearly as much detail as the front of the layout structure does, and that's for sure. This bottom one here was a true scale structure that my father bought someplace. I'd had it on the thing for years, and finally decided that one of our the crews up in the branch line had it, and his wife, who's out hanging out her nice white sheets there, is probably very glad that we don't run steam on that branch anymore. Stations. The upper right one here is I think an Atlas model. Again, somebody put it together and made a real mess of it. And I kind of took it apart and deconstructed it and rebuilt it as something painted a little more like the New Haven painted their stations. Not sure where it's going to go yet. The hardest part of it was fixing the phone booth, which is really neat. And I looked for an HO scale model of Superman to go into that phone booth, but I couldn't find him. So I guess maybe the guy in there is Clark Kent. I don't know, getting ready to change into Superman. And then there's the one on the left is, I think, a Revell freight station, which is kind of neat. I like the way it's designed. And this little garage here was just a thing to fill a space. Deconstruction. Okay. You shouldn't be afraid to try and take stuff apart if you get it, get it cheaply enough. A lot of kits are available built up at swap meets because the kids are selling off the old man stuff and are usually glad to part with it. And you can usually negotiate a good price. And many of them you will find were glued together with old style adhesives that have dried out and will come apart with just a little bit of persuasion or some, in the case of plastic ones, sometimes just some 10X or one of the solvent plastic cements will soften up that glue enough so that you can take it apart without destroying it. And if you break something, you can figure out a way to camouflage it. Now, this one on the left is the South River Model Works Whitensville Spinning Ring Factory. It lists for $395 if you could get it. And I've seen them for much more than that on eBay. My buddy Jim Height got this someplace from at a train show, and I have to say that the wife of whoever the guy was that built it should have divorced him for spending that kind of money and then butchering this beautiful structure as much as he did. But I was able to take it apart and put it back into decent shape. Some of the parts weren't salvageable. It all turned out pretty well and became part of this factory complex in Norwood on Jim's layout, the old mill structure on the left, and then the newer structure that they added later on the right when they switched from water power to coal power. Let's see here. You can find lots of good stuff at swap meets and auctions and train shows. Mostly stuff someone wants to get rid of or thought they'd build and didn't. The Sidem Warehouse is one of their kits. They're metal kits. If you haven't built any of them, you have to solder them together, which can be done with a heavy duty iron. I think if I were going to build a lot of them, I'd look into some resistant soldering. The ice house you see below is from a company called Junco, Junco. It's a wood kit. I think I got it for $5 at an auction. Somebody was going to build it and then didn't. These kits come pretty much, they're a box of wood and some instructions that say build the model and paint it. So it's almost like scratch building, except they give you all the parts that you need. It builds into a very satisfying model. They have quite a number of wood kits, which you'll find on eBay sometimes. Here's another example. This one is by Dyna Models. Mostly a box of wood shapes and siding. Certainly not as easy to put together as laser cut kits are today, but again, very satisfying. And again, it only cost me $5. In both cases, I replaced the roofing with some better materials than what came in it. This plumbing supply building, if you take a look under the awning, you see all those detail castings that came with it. I could have thrown the kit away and kept them and probably made money. That's the kind of thing here. Then this garage is just a composite that I did of odds and ends to fit the space. Now, there are also things that don't work out. This, I think, is a Revell structure. It's I was going to use it as a sand house, but it just wasn't the prototype that I needed. So I scratch built something that would be more in keeping with what I wanted for my sand house. But I did rework this in a little bit and found a place for it on another part of the layout. But W.C. Fields is supposed to have said, if at first you don't succeed, try again, then quit. There's no use being a damn fool about it. So, if you try something that doesn't work, oh well. This is an example of that. I was looking to put an A&P market that had been modernized in. It worked okay way back on the layout, but if you got up close to look at it, it wasn't such a great idea. And again, you know, it was an idea. That's the Plasticville supermarket there with and I found an A&P sign someplace and cut it out into their round sign that they had. Let's see here. And finally, there's the parts box. Okay. Never throw anything away. Never throw anything away. Anything left over from building something goes in the parts box or in a drawer. There's the piece on the bottom there is the loading dock section I cut off of one of the structures I talked about earlier on. I figure my kids can throw it away when they clean the mess out. Well, if they don't have a use for it. And so finally, this is one from my friend Roger's layout. My father had this someplace and I had it at one time. This is a paper and cardboard structure. I think it was made by Ideal back in the day. It's, you know, it's crude by today's standards. The thing, some of these are good for. You may remember the HO cutout city that Karsten's put out. Originally, those were on the back cover of Railroad Model Craftsman, and you cut them out, glued them onto a sheet of shirt cardboard, and then cut them out and built them into buildings. I talked to Otto von Drack a couple of times and said, you know, Otto, you really ought to re-release those. They'd be great background structures, and they'd be great plans for scratch building something as well, because you already have all the dimensions and everything there, and an idea at least of colors and things. So, you know, don't be afraid to look at that a little bit. Not as what it is, but what it could become, what you could do with it, what it could become. And that's all, folks.